What do you make of the spectacle of Trump at the Fulton County Jail, along with this kind of dichotomy of Republican candidates making a show of voicing their support for the quadruply indicted frontrunner?
Well, you're right that the trademark glower and glare is something that we absolutely could have expected, and in fact did expect from the Trump mugshot. I was on a tight deadline for the New Yorker. It's not known for its quick turnarounds, right? So, I pre-wrote anticipating that he would be glaring at us. And actually, I would say the only surprise, right, is that he looks a little bit even more sinister than I cooked up. But, it's when we were working on our book, The Divider, about Trump in the White House, one of the things I found really interesting is the extent to which he is very calculated. This is not the spontaneous work of a showman. It's the calculated, cultivated persona that he wants. He doesn't believe in smiling. There are very few photo ops you'll find him in which he's doing that. He thinks that, he wants to project this image of strength, of being a tough guy, a boss, a strong man, and he'd rather really be scowling at you than smiling at you in a situation like this. So the Trump playbook is the Trump playbook, but what's so remarkable, and the reason we're talking about him, of course, is because the Republican Party has decided to continue to embrace him. And I'm glad you showed that moment from the debate, because I know people are talking about, oh, well, they had an interesting policy back and forth, but the truth is, everything that was really important was contained in that moment when 6 of those 8 candidates said they would vote again for a guy who they're supposedly running against, even if he was a convicted felon.
Brian, your thoughts on this? I mean, the moment of the picture, the mugshot, juxtaposed with the reality that the Republicans are still behind this guy, even if he is convicted.
That was his mugshot was his "I am your retribution" face. That's what he told the CPAC audience in March. I'm your retribution. That's what he's promising in a second term. And that's what the image was all about. He's somehow tried to celebrate this image. And his most cheerful propagandists on conservative media are claiming that he looks strong when, in fact, this is the weakest possible image. But, there's so many lies happening this week around Trump. You think about his interview with Tucker Carlson, which he claimed was bigger than the Super Bowl. We heard the big lie in 2020. This is the new little lie Trump's coming out with, claiming that he's more popular than the Fox debate, claiming he's more popular than the Super Bowl or Oprah Winfrey. It's a joke, but it's a joke that's actually self-defeating, because he's telling his MAGA base that he's more popular than he actually is. And at the end of the day, there's going to be a push comes to shove moment where that's proven not to be true, where actually he was not more popular than the debate. He can claim it for a while, but the truth will eventually someday rear its head, and he will suffer as a result.
We'll talk a little bit about that Twitter and the viewership in just a moment. But Susan, I want to point something out that you wrote, and Trump's former, you pointed out that Trump's former campaign manager, Bill Stepien, coined this term "team normal" to describe those who tried and failed to convince Trump that he had really lost the election. And to Brian's point here about the reality kind of setting in at some point, do you think that term still carries any weight with Team Trump or Team Normal?
Well, I think one of the points I was trying to make is that, unfortunately, even what passes for Team Normal and the remains of the Republican establishment, characters like Nikki Haley, the former governor of South Carolina, Chris Christie, the former governor of New Jersey, they made their successes in the pre-Trump Republican Party. And yet, like Mike Pence, the former vice president, fatally compromised in the end. They made a deal with the devil. They knew that it was wrong. The lure of power and access and being inside, they chose to be his vice president, his UN ambassador, his confidant and friend. In the case of Chris Christie, all of them got singed in different ways by that. Frankly, both Mike Pence and Chris Christie could arguably say that they were, almost killed by Donald Trump. Mike Pence by the pro-Trump mob on January 6th. Chris Christie literally contracted COVID because Trump lied about it as Christie was prepping him for the 2020 debate. And I think that was the end of their friendship. But the point is, these folks, even at the risk of their own lives, have found it so difficult to swear off Donald Trump. There is no Team Normal. Without the support of Team Normal, Donald Trump would not have been able overall to command his power over the Republican Party. It's not just the most extreme MAGA people.